Number one, by Raerth. I vaguely recall reading an editorial bemoaning the pace of change in the modern world and how this complicated writing science fiction based in the near future. The example used was the fall of the Berlin Wall and how many authors subsequently found their newly released work severely dated. Well, in your own work linked to the book Eon, threat of nuclear war with the Soviets has been a major plot point. How do you feel this affects the novel now, and does the fear of major socio-political change affect your writing process? I've gotten a lot smarter since I wrote Eon, because who knew that the Soviet Union would collapse 4 years after my book was published, thereby making all Cold War stories kind of out of date. So Eon is best thought of as being in its own alternate universe. but in fact, it's a very good question, because I'm now writing, like umpty-ump 5 to 10 years down the road. And I find that to be both more challenging and more interesting, because you can take the technology that already exists and apply it and ramp it up a little bit. No one expects it to be the way you're writing about it exactly, because in a sense you're doing this feedback loop of influencing the people who are building the technology, who are going to bring it to fruition. In some cases, you can warn them not to do this, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a good question. So major social political change. Well, in this book that I'm working on now, just finishing it up, which is a follow-on to Quantico, it's called Mariposa. Started writing it about a year and a half ago, and postulated that the U.S. government would be in severe financial downturn, which was actually in Quantico, written around 2004, 2005. So the severe downturn is leading to a lot of interesting political repercussions, one of which is the U.S. government can't stop certain states from trying to secede, one of which is Texas. Now, how weird is that? Why would Texas want to secede? I don't know. But anyway, that's a palpable hit, working just a few years down the road. So, number two, by Wagley Cox. Do you feel hard science fiction is underrepresented in pop culture? If so, do you think there's any one particular reason why this might be the case? With the new Star Trek movie due out now, surely there's opportunity to collect converts from that particular crowd. Well, I am that particular crowd. I mean, just went down to Los Angeles and wandered all around Paramount Studios to reminisce before seeing the movie on preview. And I like the movie. They've done a good job kind of renewing the whole mythology. I approve of it. But I first pitched at Paramount for the original second Star Trek TV show before they converted it into a movie. That was my first story pitch, was for Star Trek. If that had been purchased, I probably would have ended up doing much more screenwriting. That said, I was a Star Trek fan in 1966, and so it was good to just get down there and see the set or the studio, go around that neighborhood, then drive out to Culver City and see the other studios. I'm a big movie fan. So as far as getting the Star Trek fans to come over, Star Trek is a television show. It's mass media. To get them to come over to reading hard science fiction, is some of them will do it, some of them won't, based on their proclivities. So my feeling is that they're welcome to come. It's a big tent, wonderful game. The game is trying to figure out what the future will be. Star Trek has contributed. Certainly, if you take a look at flip phones and communicators, there we are. So I think that Star Trek is part of that thing. And in fact, for television back in the 1960s, Star Trek was pretty hard science fiction, except, of course, for the faster-than-light travel, which I think is kind of a gimme like time travel. So let's see. David Rice, 666. Who is your favorite SF fantasy author? I've got a lot of them. I'd say the one that's had the biggest influence on me, well, the two actually, probably be between Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, Ray Bradbury, 3. Isaac Asimov, the usual run, but between those, probably Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury. But if we go back, there are some writers that not many people know about now. Olaf Stapledon wrote books back in the 1930s. He wrote Last and First Man and Star Maker. He wrote a novel about a superhuman called Oddjohn, which I highly recommend, and a book about a super dog called Sirius, which is also very good. A dog of human intelligence, artificially bred. Stapledon wrote his histories, and they are histories more than novels. First of all, Last and First Men is about the entire human race for 2 billion years into the future, 18 different species. Star Maker is the history of the universe. And if that isn't big enough, at the end, the concluding chapter is a brief synopsis of alternate universes before and after the creation of our universe. So I think that's pretty substantial. Number 4 here, Bad Boy in DSU. As an author who writes novels in some very popular and well-known universes, do you have specific sources you use to try and stay within the canon of a particular universe? You've got to know the universe. That's all there is to it. Unfortunately, I know the universes I've been writing in. In a sense, writing in Star Trek and Star Wars prepares you for writing in the Foundation universe, because both of those creators were heavily influenced by George Lucas's thinking, rather by Isaac Asimov's thinking. Foundation being really a key book for all empires to come thereafter. So I think that by the time I get to Star Wars, it's pretty familiar territory. And then I go back and I can write a Foundation book and really, key right into what Isaac was thinking. In a sense, you have to kind of channel the author, the original creator. And sometimes I felt that I was channeling Isaac, and since he was a bit of an atheist and didn't believe in the afterlife, I think he was probably pretty surprised by that. But we make a good collaboration team. I really enjoyed writing that book. By rude name here, how do you write? And by this I don't mean writing style. I guess I mean writing habit. For whatever reason, I'm fascinated by the different ways authors go about their art. Some authors have a mandatory word count or page count they try to complete every day. Others have a set time they always have to be writing. When you write, do you write with any particular person in mind as a reader? Actually, I don't. When I write, it's kind of this ambiguous person that I think is going to want to be entertained, smart enough to figure out my puzzles, that sort of thing, and not exactly like me, but kind of close. So that's my ideal reader. It's interesting that on a couple of occasions I found readers who were more ideal than I was, because they found things in my books that I never knew were there, and came up with the textual definitions to prove that they were true. And that's interesting when that happens. I think some of my readers need to get lives. But number 6, by Timmy Ty. In Darwin's Radio and Darwin's Children, you paint a certain picture of how the regular type humans respond to another species emerging that might be superior to them. Ruling out that scenario as somewhat unlikely, do you still believe this would happen if the changes were artificial, if genetic manipulation would lead to way more advanced children of the parents, and only them who can afford it? Interesting question. I think that if you're paying a lot of money to change your children into super beings of some sort or another, you'll probably be able to pay a lot of money to have them go to special schools and be isolated. And in that case, how different is that from the Midwich Cuckoos, from Village of the Damned, basically, where your kids have blonde hair and blue eyes and they're isolated, and I think it's actually pretty likely that evolution is occurring right now. We know that's the case. Each one of us is custom built. We're learning more about genetics now. Genetics, it appears that every one of us, our genetics are different even from closely related humans. So there's a lot of variation even within individuals in the human race, and the more we learn about the genome, the more we realize that being custom built, we are each our own variety of biological species. It just happens we can mate with each other most of the time, not always. If that question is too serious to tackle, why did you make the Shiva kids so alien? They almost reverted in some sense and didn't really seem to hold any advantage as opposed to earlier changes. For me, that kind of took the fun out of it. You didn't read it closely, did you? These kids knew how to communicate with each other better than we do. That was their advantage. They could communicate. We can't. Think of all the frustration that happens simply because we don't have the bandwidth to express our emotions and our feelings, and they did. So you didn't tie into the whole bit that they could speak 2 streams of language at once, that they could communicate with their facial expressions better than we can, that they could smell each other better than we can, that they can communicate with smell. That's pretty advanced, I think. Number 7, Jeebus wept. How do you regard copyright activist authors like Cory Doctorow, and would you consider making all of your work available free online in ebook format? I greatly admire Cory, and I think he's a revolutionary thinker, and very likely some of his ideas are going to influence what we do with the future of electronic publishing. But when you say the information wants to be free, believe me, hamburgers want to be free too. So when McDonald's hands out free hamburgers, and we can all basically go off the gold standard beef patties and so on, then I think I will do that. That said, I think it's very interesting that you can put a lot of books, text, largely online, and then people will go to finish them by purchasing them. That sort of honorable relationship is, I think, a very good model.